So the way I define an alcoholic is that we have that voice for life. And that voice is that neural pathway that we built into a superhighway that thinks alcohol is the answer to everything.
You have genetic predispositions to stress reactivity. But if you're actually releasing the right amount of neurochemicals to counter that, now it'll get you back to balance. And because you may have deficiencies in that, getting it from the plant like cannabis, like CBD, it'll actually help to dial down that expression of stress reactivity.
But you found that cannabis helped with your focus?
But it depends. It depends on what type of cannabis and when you're consuming it. So yeah, I wouldn't consume something with THC during the day. We have two separate systems in this country. And we have the sick care system and we have a healthcare system. Big Pharma is incentivized to provide you products that address the symptoms.
Len's the founder of EndoDNA, and they're an authority in genetics and personalized medicine. And he's also coaches high-performing executives on how to turn neurodiversity and unconventional wiring into their greatest advantage, which is right up my alley. So we're going to get into ADHD. We're also going to get into genetic testing, why anyone who's ever gotten a prescription, basically needs to get it done, including myself. We'll even might get into talking about a little cannabis and how it isn't just a plant, but maybe a missing key to natural healing.
The reason why we started a genetic test for your endocannabinoid system. So I used to have dispensaries, cannabis dispensaries in the Orange County, Los Angeles area. And one of the guys that worked with us, he wanted to consume some cannabis. I think he was a partner in the company. And he's like, you have any cannabis? And I'm like, yeah, we have a sativa dominant hybrid. He goes, oh, no. That stuff puts me to sleep. I'm like, what do you mean? I always thought it was indica in the couch and sativa is the up, right? He goes, not for me. And that's actually what triggered my curiosity to do genetic testing to find out why certain people are affected by certain things and other people are not.
And I think you said you metabolize CBD faster, right?
Ultra rapid metabolizer of CBD, yes. So like whatever, people are like, CBD doesn't work for me. I'm like, well, how much do you take? Well, I took a dropper full. Well, how do you know you're a rapid metabolizer? Because I just pee it out really quick. It creates expensive urine for me. So I have to take at least double what the suggested dose is.
Wow. All right. So this is a question I've always wondered. You never hear about potaholics, right? But there's definitely different levels of addiction. The pot, but I can take one, and pot reminds me what it must be like for a normal drinker. And I'm not a pot smoker, but when I used to on occasion, when my buddies would go up to Vermont or whatever, I would take one hit of pot and I'd be good all night. And I'd even be a zombie for like 2 hours, but I'd be good all night. Then I have buddies that can take hit after hit after hit and pretty heavily addicted to it. So is that somewhat related to how fast they metabolize? I wondered, how can they take that many hits?
Well, first of all, by consuming cannabis or delta-9 THC, which is a psychoactive substance, by consuming that, it loads your receptors. So once your receptors are loaded, it takes you more and more and more to get the same exact feeling. Now, that's with most, exogenous substances like cocaine, etc. However, what happens in cannabis is when you take a pause, your receptors reset themselves, unlike a lot of the other substances. So you can start again once your receptors reset themselves. The problem or the challenge is when your receptors are already kind of saturated and you have these predispositions, as I said, to stress or mood or the depressive states, etc., your immunal response. So think about having a free radical of an anandamide, AEVE. It's a free radical. Your immune system is like, I took too much. I have this free radical. So your immune system may overreact to that, create a cytokine, so turn things on. Now, if you have predisposition to the stress or mood or depressive feelings, it can turn those markers on. So people are consuming certain cannabis, say, oh no, it gives me anxiety, it makes me stressed, or no, it puts me in a depressive state. That's one of the reasons why it can trigger those responses as well.
It sounds similar to alcoholism, right? The more, or any chronic drinker, whether you're an alcoholic or not, the more you drink, the more your brain shuts down, gets flooded with artificial dopamine, and it shuts down the receptors. So you have to drink more to get the same effect. So,
yeah, but so this is not dopamine related. You're absolutely
right.
correct when it comes to alcohol or when it comes to cocaine, same exact thing, but it changes the production of dopamine. So if you're taking an exogenous substance like I'll use cocaine since it's Schedule 2 narcotic. So it binds to your dopamine receptors, squirts a shitload of dopamine into your bloodstream, and blocks the reuptake of the dopamine. So you're getting all this dopamine, it's great. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And your brain's like, wait a second, I like that. Let me send a signal to give you more of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce less of my own dopamine, and I'm going to send signals for you to get more. So now with the combination of that, you have an impulsivity gene, you have a dependence gene, because there's dependence genes to alcohol, there's dependence genes to cocaine, methamphetamines. There's no dependence genes related to phytocannabinoids. So there is mental dependence, but there's not a physical dependence, unlike other substances that you just mentioned. So what happens is you stop producing your own endogenous neurochemicals. With cannabis, it's not like that. You're still producing your own endogenous neurochemicals, except for taking something from the outside. It floods. It's too much. So your body, your immune system is overreacting to that. But it's not going to stop you from producing your own endogenous anandamide or 2-AG.
Now a word from our sponsor, who is me. I am Brian, a certified sobriety and subconscious mindset coach. I spent years overcoming alcohol addiction and studying how the addicted brain works. I work with clients like you every day who find doing it alone or going to meetings just isn't enough. I'm not only a coach, I'm also a partner. Your sobriety will be my sobriety. My contact info is in the description. Let's do this. But you found that cannabis helped with your focus?
Oh, yeah.
And you actively you use it for that?
But it depends. It depends on what type of cannabis and when you're consuming it. So yeah, I wouldn't consume something with THC during the day because it actually doesn't provide me that focus. But something with high CBD, very low THC, with things like linalool, beta caryophyllene, those terpene profiles, they seem to connect with me and provide me an ability to focus. We have 8 patents on 8 different formulations for different conditions that we license to manufacturers all over the world. And one of them is our focus formulation that seems to be very helpful for people with ADHD.
And I believe you said it's through testing could determine which kind of cannabis is the right fit. Like none of them have really agreed with me, but it sounds like potentially there would be one out there that does, but your kind of testing could determine actually which kind would work best.
When we met with the FDA for the endocannabinoid system test, they said, what is the purpose of your test? And I said to them to help people either mitigate or avoid a possible adverse event. So it's not necessarily to find exactly what's the greatest thing for you. It's to make sure that you don't step into the potholes in your own road. So we know where your possible adverse effects are. And now you can find things that are not those that may be better aligned with you. So I'll give you an example. Like in cannabis, if somebody has stress reactivity, since we talked about stress and anxiety and all that stuff. Well, if you're consuming cannabis varietals that are high in like things like limonene, and there's sativa dominance. So these are what's called a terpene. So you have cannabinoids, which is CBD, THC, CBG, etc. They're the genetics of the plant. then the plant also excretes essential oils. Those essential oils give it its smell and also produce an effect. Those are called terpenes or terpenoids. So those essential oils, in conjunction with the cannabinoids, the genetics, they produce an effect. So if you have something that smells like citrusy, that's usually high in limonene, which is found in citrus fruits, which gives you that dopamine kind of up feeling. The second would be indica dominant, and they smell like skunky diesel kind of smell. I'm sure you smell that before. They're more associated with a sedative. They're more sedative. So the cannabinoids and terpenes, if you are prone to stress, but you don't want to be sedated, there's also things like linalool, which is found in lavender, which is calming, relaxing without being sedative. So you can find the right ratio of cannabinoids. And by the way, THC has a very narrow therapeutic window. So having these high amounts of THC, that's where you have adverse effects, because it's not meant for us unless we're trying to replace a morphine drip where we're looking for an analgesic for daily use or for specific use. Low amounts of THC showed in studies that are much more effective or efficacious than high amounts of THC. So finding the right ratio balance of cannabinoids with the right terpene profile, that's what you can find. And the third part is method of consumption. Well, we're talking about metabolism. If I am a poor metabolizer or slow metabolizer and I'm eating gummies, well, that gummy is going to take longer to hit me. It's going to last much longer. And guess what? It's going to have a much stronger effect. So method of consumption, maybe you want to avoid your first pass because your liver converts that delta 9 to something called 11-oxyhydroxide, which can be a lot more powerful than just consuming cannabis is smoking it. So Grandma Mary may take a gummy or a piece of chocolate and then tell all her friends stay away from devil's lettuce because it made me high for 2 days. But if she would have taken a dropper full, like a tincture, she would have a completely different experience.
And again, that system you keep referring to, the endocannabinoid, you said it earlier, but to reiterate, that's a system it's the whole range of sleep, mood, appetite, memory, reproduction, the whole homeostasis, right?
It maintains balance. So the idea is that it's homeostasis and balance. And it's an interesting system because it helps to maintain that. And, look, when cannabis was made illegal or whatever you want to call it from 1937, different iterations, prior to that, it would grow everywhere. So even the non-intoxicating part, hemp, like our forefathers came to this country, their sailboats had hemp sails, and their uniforms were made of hemp, and it's an incredible substance. But animals used to eat them like grass because and then we would get in their water supply, we get in their milk. So we had a lot of the endogenous coming from our food supply. But when we became prohibition happened, then we stopped getting that. So a lot of people have deficiencies in our own systems as well. That's why we're lucky we have the plant in nature to be able to subsidize for that. So I was doing a talk in front of a bunch of doctors, and I was talking about, genetics and all these other things. And then at the end of the talk, I said, anybody have any questions? And it was like crickets. I'm like, gosh, shit, not a good job by me. No questions, really? I'm like, all right. But the last line had my email and it had my phone on there. So I said, any questions, whatever. I walked off stage. Within 30 minutes, I started getting texts and emails from doctors in the audience asking me questions. So I realized first that they don't want to ask a quote unquote dumb question in front of their peers. But also I realized that they don't understand genetics that well. Not everybody, but a lot of doctors, because they only had a DNA class like in school, like in college, or maybe even the beginning of medical school. They never really studied it, genetics. So I said to my team, I said, listen, if we're going to get higher levels of adoption, we need to allow doctors to be able to chat with your DNA. Like, well, how? So we created a platform that allows doctors to interrogate the genome. So that way they can ask the genetics questions within its own proprietary LLM. We have a patent on that too. Now they're having a conversation. They can interrogate it. And now they can understand what they need to do and get suggestions by the LLM on a treatment protocol that's specific to the individual.
The first thing doctors should ask me before they even prescribe is, what is your physical regimen? How much exercise are you getting? How much sunlight are you getting? And now I've learned from listening to your podcast with Dave Asprey, I mean, really before they prescribe, they should have people getting genetic testing to see how their body's going to react, because I'll say it for you, 99.9 of our DNA is identical, but 0.1% is what makes us unique and means how our body reacts to different things like medication, food, and even exercise.
And you're absolutely right about this whole notion of, getting personalized treatment and even prescriptions for medications, because we have these series of genes that call it cytochrome P450. So CYP450, everybody has them. And they produce enzymes that help us metabolize different things like gluten and lactose and other things and different drugs. So if somebody, doctor says, take 2 of these and call me in the morning, I'm like, why 2? Why not 4? Why not 1? Because I may be an ultra rapid metabolizer. When I go to the dentist and I go get my Novocaine shot, well, I always tell him, I'm a rapid metabolizer. And I've had this happen. I was getting I don't remember what I was getting, some dental work, and he had 2 shots. And I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. Numb. Yeah, great. 15, 20 minutes into it, I'm like, I'm feeling it. I'm raising my hand. And he's like, go and get another shot. So this is the thing that we really need to get into this habit in medicine. That's preventative medicine, real medicine, not sick care, but real health care, that we have to treat people like individuals because we all metabolize differently. Even hormones, there's a thing called aromatization. How much hormones you excrete, how much hormones you need for hormone optimization, it's also an individual thing. And prescribing drugs, especially, psychoactive drugs like antidepressant medication. I had a buddy of mine, a very successful business person, and he had I did his DNA test before, so I knew what predispositions he had. And he had a venture that didn't go well, so he became depressed. And he went to a psychopharmacologist and got an antidepressant. So he tells me the story. He doesn't live in LA, but he was driving in LA around the canyons, like Mulholland and all that stuff. And he said he was driving with his wife and one of his kids. He said he had an overwhelming desire to drive off the cliff. Holy shit! He goes, it was so real, and it was pulling him. He had to pull over, and he was sweating. He got out of the car, and his wife's like, "You okay?" He's like, "I'm not okay, and I should not be driving." So luckily, he realized that about himself. But the medication that he was prescribed, first of all, when he did his pharmacogenomics test, it showed that his medication was red. So it wasn't the right medication for him. The second thing is the side effects of the medication is suicidal thoughts. The third thing is that in his genetic report, he had treatment-resistant depression markers. So most likely that medication wouldn't work for him in the first place, but he got the side effects, which are suicidal thoughts. So these are the reasons why, every doctor who prescribes any medication or anything, they should absolutely do genetic testing and pharmacogenomics, etc.
Do I even need to go to the doctor, by the way? Or if I just get testing from a service like yourself?
Yeah. So let me tell you how we sort of started EndoDNA in the direction that it is now. So we started, I think I mentioned we started as the first test for your endocannabinoid system. We actually have a patent on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system. So we have, tens of thousands of customers. I think we're in 9 different countries. And then somewhere around 2024, COVID was an interesting time. And I'm sure it was an interesting time for a lot of people, for different ways for business. So we had to, figure things out. as we go. And in 2024, I got a call from a doctor friend, and she goes, "Hey, Len, I'm seeing a lot of young women. They are like late 20s, early 30s with perimenopause symptoms." I'm like, wow, that's young, you know? I wonder if that has anything to do with the hormones that's in our water and foods. And then she goes, I have women that are also coming in with really severe symptoms of menopause, hot flash severity, hot flash frequency, sleep issues, weight issues, all these different things. And she's like, is there a way that you think we can get ahead of them? So, I always say yes, and then I'll try to figure it out later. So I'm like, yeah, we can. One back to my team. And, we can create a female hormone health test. So we build a female hormone health test, and then we build a male hormone health test, and then decided to shift our entire business model to B2B. So instead of selling direct to consumers, even though we'd still have the endocannabinoid system test because you can't prescribe cannabis, every other test is sold through a doctor. So our customer is a functional medical professional, integrative medical professional, somebody who's preventative health, but is cash-based. So we set them up with a platform. The platform is called BIOS, and we have a patent on machine learning-based efficacy predictions based on genetic and biometric information. So they set up the platform in their practice. They can use their DNA testing. They can also upload their labs, everything else, and the platform will give them protocol suggestions. So here's your treatment plan suggestion based on all those factors, your lifestyle markers, your genetic markers, your biomarkers, all that stuff. And the doctor can go in, and it's in 3 different parts. The first is RX, so it's anything that's pharmaceutical, so they can prescribe anything that's suggested. The second one is non-prescriptive, so it can be vitamins, supplements, nutrients, can be peptides, etc. And the third is lifestyle modifiers. So that's some of the things you already talked about, diet, exercise, but it could be sauna, it could be related therapy, cold plungers, anything like that. And here's the thing that makes us truly unique is the feedback loop. Now that you have your protocol and it's prescribed to you, this is what you do in your patient portal. Now we can go back, test you, 12 weeks later, whatever the doctor suggests, and we look at the epigenetic changes. So this is the expression of the markers called methylation. So we check what's been methylated or unmethylated. It comes back, so it switches turn on and off. It comes back with suggestions to modify the treatment plan. So like your doctor would say, histamine, antihistamine, you're going to come back, your markers didn't change, and then the platform is going to say, hey, don't do histamine, try this instead. So it's an always learning, evolving platform that's based on those factors. So you have what's called longitudinal care over time, and you have preventative care because if you know where your potholes are on your road, now you can get ahead of those before they express themselves. So long-winded answer to your question is you have to go through a healthcare practitioner. On EndoDNA, you can find a practitioner, or if your doctor doesn't do genetic testing, and maybe they're intimidated by it or something, or they'd say, oh, who cares about the genome? It doesn't change anyway. We care about the epigenome. Great. Have them go to EndoDNA and sign up as a practitioner and then use the platform. I don't think people really understood that there is a system inside our bodies, and we're taking an exogenous substance plant that binds to receptors that we have in our bodies and releases our own neurochemistry. And this is where people get things on. They're like, oh, I don't need drugs and all that stuff. Okay, that's fine. And cannabis is not truly a drug per se. It's a ligand to express our own neurochemistry. But this endocannabinoid system is this ancient system that we evolved with. We evolved with a lot of different things. We have an appendix. What do we need it for? It's still there, but, we sort of grew out of the need for the appendix. Maybe there was a need at some point in our lives. But the endocannabinoid system is still there and it's functioning. And it was only discovered in 1992 by an Israeli scientist named Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. And that endocannabinoid system is our primary modulating system. It's really responsible for what's called homeostasis and balance in our bodies. And the way that it works, it gets signals from the other systems. sends that signal up the central nervous system, sort of like salmon swimming upstream to the brain. And then the brain excretes two specific neurochemicals. The first one is called anandamide. So the word ananda means bliss in Sanskrit. This is a bliss neurochemical. This is the one that we excrete when we get the runner's high for working out, for hiking. It's called AEA, anandamide. And the second one is called 2AG, and that is excreted also to help regulate or modulate our immune, digestive systems, etc. So when we are deficient in our own endogenous, that means we produce ourselves, we're lucky that we have this substance in plant, in nature, in a plant called cannabis. And there, when we consume the plant, after we heat it and it drops the acid molecule, it's called decarboxylation. It binds to your CB1 receptors, which are located in our brain and central nervous system, releases anandamide, AEA. And when we consume cannabidiol, CBD, it's not intoxicating, and it binds to your CB2 receptors or has an affinity for them, and excretes 2AG, which help to balance our immune response. When you were talking about anxiety just a couple minutes ago, you have genetic predispositions to stress reactivity. But if you're actually releasing the right amount of neurochemicals to counter that, now it'll get you back to balance. And because you may have deficiencies in that, getting it from the plant like cannabis, like CBD, it'll actually help to dial down that expression of stress reactivity. So this is where it comes into play if you want to maintain balance and homeostasis.
Do you think everyone has residual anxiety throughout the day regardless?
No, I didn't say everyone needs. What I'm saying is that if you have deficiencies in your own endocannabinoid system, and you have predispositions to things like stress reactivity, PTSD, etc. Like I'll give you an example. There are people who are going into the military. I've spoken to them before on my show and just in life. They love the military. They love it so much. Some of them actually left the military because killing became such a routine thing. Like, oh yeah, it's great. Or cheering themselves up. They didn't experience that PTSD, depression, anxiety after people got out. Some people did. Well, if you look at the two different groups of people, the people that are experiencing that had a genetic predisposition to PTSD. They had a genetic predisposition to stress reactivity, and they had a genetic predisposition to something called fear extinction, slow rate of fear extinction. So what happens is if you have a stressful event, that stress gene is turned on epigenetically. So the switch is on. Now, if you have predisposition to PTSD, now it can replay that movie over and over. And fear extinction is sort of when we have a traumatic event, we take that traumatic event and we store it in our subconscious unless we have some neurological condition. But under great duress, it can bring that memory of, when you were abused, whatever it is, you gonna like, I got hit by a car on my bicycle when I was 9 years old. Nothing serious, but it's a memory. So I took it and pushed it in my subconscious, but under great duress, it can bring that memory up. So people that have these predispositions, they're more likely to experience those, PTSD symptoms than people that are not. Same thing with athletes. I've had conversations with so many athletes who are like, when there's a 300-pound lineman that's running at me full speed, everything is slow. I'm in flow. It's great. I have no issues, no stress. I'm at home. It's quiet. The birds are chirping. The window's open. It's beautiful. I am just anxious. It's those kind of things.
Yeah, gotcha. Great examples you gave there. That the whole predisposition thing is fascinating, and it's a lot like, I think, alcoholism and many other things. I've even heard a neuroscientist. She claims you could smoke your entire life, but if you didn't have the gene for lung cancer, you'd never get that.
So you're much more predisposed to lung cancer if you are a smoker than you're not a smoker. If you are a smoker that actually has the predisposition to lung cancer, you're 50% more likely to experience that. However, it all if you don't have that genetic predisposition, doesn't mean that you're not going to experience or express lung cancer. It means that you're less likely than the person that has both. Genes are not just a one-off. And the thing that people, I think, don't understand is it's called polygenic effect. So it's a series of different genes that actually, when turned on, it's like, if I can give you a visual of a circuit breaker box, right? So when you're born, you get 50% of your DNA from your father, 50% from your mother. And this long circuit breaker box with on-off switches, some of them like 20%, some people it's a little bit higher, are turned on. The other genes that we have are turned on based on our lifestyle. And what I mean by that is the first thing is the food that we put in our bodies, the nutrients, how we feed ourselves can either turn that gene on or off. And genes, really, that single nucleotide polymorphism, it's a messenger. It has messages that move to another place, another cell, tell it to create messenger RNA, to tell it to create an expression, tell it to create proteins, and those proteins create new cells. So these are all signaling modulators. And so if you actually are going through the process of putting good food in your body, then you're mitigating the expression of some of these negative markers as well. The second thing is exposure to things like heavy metals, pesticides, microplastics. They can actually help express your epigenetic predispositions, and then turn those switches on. And the third one is our own neurochemistry, and this is what people don't think about. So our own neurochemistry, you were just talking about, stress. So cortisol, and you talked about your morning routine and ritual. Great. Cortisol in the morning is wonderful. That's what wakes you up. Cortisol, melatonin, circadian rhythm, balance. You go out, you get sun in the morning, your circadian rhythm levels, great. But if you're experiencing that cortisol during the day, thinking a lion is chasing the jungle when they're not, now your own neurochemistry is impacting your epigenetic expression. And that, your own neurochemistry, is something you can actually control. And when you turn on a switch that shouldn't be turned on, well, guess what? Now you're creating this expression which can be, promoting disease or other conditions as well. We have two separate systems in this country. And we have the sick care system and we have a healthcare system. Unfortunately, the sick care system is rooted in insurance. And your big pharma is incentivized to provide you products that address the symptoms. We're guilty of this. We created this. We, as the patient, I'll tell you why. We are, in America, pain averse. We do not like pain. Hence, we just had it, and probably still have an opioid epidemic. Why? Because we don't want to deal with pain. So if I go to the doctor, my elbow hurts. I go to the doctor and I say, doctor, my elbow hurts. And your doctor is going to say, you know what? I'm going to see you for 15 minutes because I get paid a lot more in 15-minute intervals from my insurance reimbursement than I do if I spend an hour with you. It's not worth it for me. So I'm going to ask you, did you bang your elbow on something? No. Were you playing tennis? No. So no tennis elbow. Well, you know what? I got a solution for you. I can give you an injection in your elbow, or I can give you a pill for it. Which one would you prefer? Well, what's going to take long? Well, an injection will be instantaneous. You won't feel anything in a few minutes. The pill that you'll take may take 30 minutes, may take an hour to work. Okay. I'll take an injection. Great. You know what happened? My pain in my elbow just went away. I'm not feeling pain. The doctor said, good job. Pats himself on the back. I did no harm. I addressed the symptom that you were coming in with, which is my elbow pain. So it's a win. I don't feel pain. The doctor did their job. However, what's the root cause? Why is my elbow hurting? I didn't bang it, What if it has to do with stress? Well, how can it possibly have to do with stress? Well, maybe you are reacting stress reactivity, and you're experiencing that cortisol release during the day when you're not supposed to. Your immune system overreacts as cytokine and creates inflammation in your joints. Your joints, your knees, your hips, your neck, your back, your elbow, which you may be feeling. And by the way, if you have predispositions to gut health issues like IBD, IBS, etc., it can actually trigger those as well. So in addressing the symptoms, we are exceptional at acute care. I don't want to go anywhere else to have a surgery, or if I have a fracture or anything else, we're exceptional at that. Now, chronic conditions, I think that we are not equipped to handle that, and the system is not equipped to handle that. A functional medical professional will go in and start saying, wait a second, let me look at your gut microbiome. Well, guess what? You're expressing your serotonin levels from your gut microbiome. Are you feeling a little depressed? Yeah. What have you been eating lately? Well, guess what? Your brain is speaking to your gut through your vagus nerve, and it sends signals back to your brain and secretes other neurochemicals. And also it's secreting ghrelin, which is creating hunger for you. So now you're stress eating because you feel bad about yourself and you're depressed. Well, guess what? Now we're going to have to address how you feel about yourself. And in the meantime, we have to reduce your stress and anxiety because you're re-anchoring that over and over and over. There's no way that you're going to go to your primary care physician and they're going to do all that. They're going to listen to your heart. They're going to listen to your lung. Maybe they'll hit your knee with a mallet and see how your reflexes are. But that's not preventative medicine. Preventative medicine is, let me see what may happen. Let me get ahead of that, and let me get to the root cause of the symptom that may be creating what you're feeling. And we have to do a better job of not saying, oh no, it's pain. Well, guess what? Pain is a signal. Follow the pain and see what it's actually doing in the body, because it's telling you something. Instead of getting rid of the pain with an analgesic, I mean, we pop Advil like it's candy. People have it in their candy dish now. Oh yeah, just every day, and with my antacid. Well, these are signals. They're telling you something. You have to listen to your body.
Yeah. So, did I just hear you right? You think my primary doctor, to ask them first if they do genetic testing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ask them if they do that, and if they not, they can bring it into their practice. The only challenge is that we don't take insurance, not insurance-based, and I'll explain to you why. So the reason why is because if you have a genetic test that's a diagnostic test, by the way, we use genetics and diagnostics for 50 years. We have these genes called BRCA1, BRCA2. They're breast cancer genes for women. We've used that for 50, 60 years to determine whether somebody has breast cancer predispositions. So there are genetic tests as diagnostic tests. The challenge and the reason why we chose not to go in that direction is reimbursement. So if you have a diagnostic test, maybe the insurance company says, well, we're going to reimburse you $200. That's it. That's your maximum for that test, or whatever they determine. And the doctor doesn't really have an opportunity to make a margin off that. So having what we're classified as RUO, so it's called research use only. So it's suggestions for the doctor. That way they can, make a margin on that. They can create they can expand their business with using the test, and they can start adding protocols and products and supplements and all those different things that are personalized to you. So it's a win for the clinic because they can make margin. They can actually provide you products. And it's a win for us as patients because now we're in partnership with our doctor. A doctor has hundreds of patients, maybe more. You are your own most important patient. So if you're actually in understanding of what it is that you need to do for yourself, and you're in partnership with your doctor, and you're using something that's not hallucinating, like, an open AI platform or some of that, or Dr. Google, now everybody wins. And that's the whole point. If you're addressing the things that may come up and you're getting ahead of them, then you're not going to be a burden on the healthcare system as well. You're taking better care of yourself. Like you're doing all these different things because you've heard them on the podcast and this and that. But how do you know which are personalized to you? And when you get to a point where you're actually personalizing an experience directly, specifically to you, now it becomes something that's personalized, and it's really precision medicine. And it's not, we also talk about longevity a lot. Well, I had an aunt that passed away almost 2 years ago. She was 102 years old. When she was 102 years old, the last 15 years of her life, I don't know if she was living, she was existing. You're in a diaper, you're in bed, you're having people feed you and all that stuff. Wonderful. That's longevity. I don't want to live to 102 in a diaper. I want health span. I want to build my vessel up to the best that it can possibly be, so I'm healthy, all the way until I'm not anymore. And it's not about living longer, it's living healthier. By the way, I love functional health. I love superpower. I think all these companies are doing a great job to empower people like yourself to go and get your blood work and get all your biomarkers checked. The issue with this is, now so what? I have all this stuff. What do? I still have to go to a doctor to get a prescription. I still have to go to a doctor to go and interpret this and give me a plan. So this is why we start with a doctor and do the same exact thing. And the doctor can then work with a platform to give you a protocol and test how well it works. But, even taking function health, even taking, all the biomarkers from your blood work, you can actually upload it into the platform, or your doctor can, and then it'll interrogate that and take that into account when it's creating those treatment plan suggestions for you as well.
So are those companies competitors of yours?
No, because they focus on the end user, which is the patient. We work with the doctor. So our customer is a doctor. Their customer is you. But, going back to what you were talking about before, early on in our conversation, the whole ADD thing, the ADHD thing. So, I think people are very obsessed with labels. And it's unfortunate when you get diagnosed with something, somebody tells you have a disorder. Oh no, I have a disorder. I have attention deficit disorder. Something is wrong with me. I'm stamped. I have a scarred letter. There's something wrong with me. So you start believing there's something wrong with you, and then you can use it as your crutch in life. I have a disorder. But if you really start thinking about it, well, what does it really mean? Well, it means that you have a level of neurodivergence. So your brain is not producing enough dopamine. So you're always looking for the next hit of dopamine. And can it be detrimental? Of course. It can be difficult, especially if you don't have the right guardrails, if you have the right systems in place. It can be like, not finishing things, not being able to pay attention. There's a lot of different things that you can do all over the place. But if you have the right systems in place, you have an advantage. And the advantage is that you can multitask effectively. I was having this conversation with a person who wrote a book about the one thing, like that's the only way you can succeed. And I'm like, that's not how my brain works. And well, what do you mean? Well, I can tell you that I find an association with three things that seem to you they're unrelated, but to me, they're related. So I'm putting these pieces of the puzzle together. For you, these pieces don't fit. For me, they do. So I'm leaning into my superpower as my ADD because I can multitask where, some people don't have this, can't. So it's a reframing of what you think about it instead of having it as a disorder. And that's where a lot of these diagnoses, see what you can do to use it to your advantage.
We talk about that a lot. I've even started a community that's for recovery for people that struggle with alcoholism and ADHD, which the majority of us in the community have. And I said they're dual superpowers. I have, alcoholic friends, accountability partners, and then I have ADD accountability partners. And sometimes I forget that when they talk about drinking, I'm like, oh my God, I forget that they don't have that additional superpower, including the fact that we're in community, that we have to share much more. I mean, people with ADD struggles should be sharing in community as well, but we have to do all the work, therapy, coaching, sharing to strengthen, can't believe it hasn't come up yet, but the prefrontal cortex. That's what the key to life is, right? Is fighting off the midbrain, the troublemaker.
The struggle with alcoholism, it's genetic. I mean, we have genes that give us a predisposition to alcohol dependence. And when you mix that with a predisposition to impulsivity, with a predisposition to lower dopamine production, to then having, trauma, and it creates a vicious cycle. But if you know this about yourself, you get to make decisions. So my grandfather was an alcoholic. Luckily, I don't have any dependence genes. So I've tried all kinds of different drugs, alcohol, whatever. I don't have it. Nothing that really, calls me. So I'm lucky not to, but I know this about myself. But if you don't know this about yourself, you're going to be stepping into those things that are, oh no, we talked about this too. I'm going to go have a beer with my buddy, and then you end up in Vegas on a weekend bender, blow hookers, all that stuff. What happened? Well, it's like all the lights lit up at the same time. You triggered every single one of these, and you know this about yourself and your lifestyle, and it creates that repetition. And at some point, you have to understand what it is that's doing, and start replacing these things with positive things. You may still have an impulsivity gene, but maybe I'm impulsive about lifting weights instead of lifting, a shot glass or something like that. And those are the things that you can do to positively replace those habits.
One thing a woman just said to me recently that speaks a lot in the ADD space, she didn't like that I was using the superpower term, because she said a lot of people ADDers don't like it because it sounds like it's a superpower out of the gate. And that almost sounds like how you're describing it, but obviously not, right? It takes a lot of, just like the work to get sober, you got to do a lot of work to turn this into a superpower.
It's daily
right?
work. Like personal development is daily work, and learning new things all the time. The desire, you're absolutely right about these whole color coding systems. Look, when I used to work in an office for a little bit, my secretary would divide my paper in quarters every day, where I rate my to-dos. And the reason why I used to follow the Stephen Covey method, which is, first quadrant is urgent, important. Second quadrant is important, not urgent. Third quadrant is urgent, not important. Fourth quadrant, not urgent, not important. ADDers spend all their time in urgent, important. Everything is urgent, important. Everything is a fire. So you can't be in this quadrant for the whole day, because you're going to end up in quadrant number 4, which is nothing is urgent, nothing important, which I'm playing video games or on my phone or, taking smoke breaks, etc. So being strategic with your daily habits is really important. And then understanding that you need to anchor everything in dopamine, you have to reframe your mindset on different things. So I used to kick myself all the time, like, shit, I didn't finish this, I didn't finish that. But instead of that, why don't you celebrate the things that you finished? What's the worst thing that can happen if you don't finish that? You're going to put it on your list tomorrow, and you're going to complete it. So it isn't something you're born out of the gate and you're like, oh, I have a superpower. The superpower has to be harnessed. Every single superhero that has born with a superpower didn't come out and say, oh no, I am like now Spider. You have to learn how to use your superpower. So this is where the systems come in. And not every system works for everybody. You have to find what works best for you. And the idea is to still create a way that you're speaking to yourself positively, and you're practicing personal development every single day. Maybe my system, maybe somebody else. It doesn't matter what it is. I work with a lot of executives in my coaching that are C-suite executives that are extremely financially successful. They still have the same issues as us, and they are deeply unhappy. And why are they unhappy? A lot of them, because they don't feel like they're, you ever hear of the 4 burner theory? Like, you have most entrepreneurs have 4 burners. So you have your business, you have your family, you have your health, you have your relationships, and you have to try to keep them all burning at the same time. It's impossible. You can't do that. And so a lot of them forego their health so they can focus on their business, lose their relationships so they can focus on their business. Or maybe they focus on their health too much and their business, so they lose their relationship and, the relationship with their family and all these different things. So you have to pick the 2, focus on those the most, and make sure the people in your life understand your journey as well. It's, being an entrepreneur, it's an extremely selfish thing. It's extremely difficult. And when you have people around you that understand that, and especially, people with ADHD, they have their own struggles as entrepreneurs. Very creative, but it's, there's a lot of chaos that happens. So if you can organize and you have people in your life that can support your journey, you can really be successful.
And I'm at the point now, I've been trying to be a work from home entrepreneur for almost 2 years now. I think that's as an ADDer, that's one of the hardest things in the world, right? It's being self-disciplined from home.
I worked from home for years and years, and it's that discipline that taught me a lot. It's going to work every day doing the same exact thing. Like having a routine is really important. I think sometimes that the tasks seem daunting, so it's easier for us. We're creatures of comfort. It's easier for us to sit back down on the couch and say, I'm going to do it tomorrow because it's comfortable. And we have to feel comfortable being uncomfortable and pushing ourselves to that point where we know that we have success. And calling somebody lazy, like my dad used to call me lazy, do nothing. Really, I am one of the most productive people that I know. He will say that to this day. And the reason why is because I didn't like school. It wasn't stimulating for me. I didn't get any dopamine hits from school. I didn't learn much of anything. In college I did, but not in school. So the thing is that when you connect yourself to what's creating dopamine for you, what you're interested in, you can hyper focus, and that's your superpower. So I was painting in a studio. And for me, when I'm painting, I'm hyper focused. I don't know what time it is. The guy's tapping my shoulder saying, hey, we're closing up. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you've been here for 6 hours. I didn't even notice it. That's because I'm not lazy. I'm just doing something I am enjoying. So my blinders are on and I'm hyper focusing on it. And when you find that thing that stimulates you, whether it's, making pizza. I used to work in a pizza. It's you're flipping pies and all that stuff. So you're interested. That is of interest to me. It's creating dopamine for me. So you got to find that thing that really stimulates you and get away from the things that don't. And too many people with ADD sit there at their 9-to-5 job, knowing that it's not for them, but because it's comfortable for them, they're scared to fail. They stay in this job. And I'm not telling anybody quit your job tomorrow, but do everything that you find out that you don't like. So scratch it off your list and say, I don't like that. It's not for me, and try something else. So if I'm not good at organizing, I'm not good at making presentations, I'm going to find somebody to do this, or I'm going to find my AI agent to do that. I'm going to triple down on my strengths and outsource my weaknesses.
Yep, you nailed it. Synaptic pruning is I'm sure a term where it's the brain's natural spring cleaning process, where it eliminates weak or unused neural connections while strengthening frequently used ones. So the way I define an alcoholic is that we have that voice for life. And that voice is that neural pathway that we built into a superhighway that thinks alcohol is the answer to everything. And unlike most neural pathways, that if you don't use them, they get pruned, they atrophy, and they die. With an alcoholic, that voice gets weaker. Every day we don't drink, it gets weaker, we get stronger. But that's why no matter whether you go 1, 5, 10, 20, 50 years, there is no cure for the disorder or the disease. You can only be in permanent remission. And I've never heard it said anywhere, but I know that's the reason. I know that's what the voice is. And I know the reason is because in our case, we don't have that synaptic pruning doesn't happen with that neural pathway.
I think it makes sense. I think there's two separate things going on at the same time. You have a mental part of addiction dependence. You have a physical part of addiction dependence. So you have to address the physical first. If you are triggering your genetic predisposition for alcohol dependence, now you have a physical one. If you have a mental thing that keeps going back to a habit, so this is my crutch. I do these things. It's difficult. I grab a drink. It makes it better kind of thing. This is in your habits. So these are things that you have to break. And I kind of agree with you that you have to do this every single day for life and work on both of those things, your physical and your mental.
You're basically describing neurodivergent thinking, right? Which I never even thought about what that really meant, but neurodivergent, multiple paths. So now I'm finding in sobriety, my creative mind is unleashed. And yes, I'm making all kinds of connections between even alcoholism and ADHD and all kinds of stuff. It's nonstop. I can't keep up. And I've heard many others say this. They can't keep up with all the thoughts. I mean, I have a 5-foot-by-3 whiteboard right over here that's got notes just all over it. My voice memos are full. I mean, I can't keep up with it. And I can't stop consuming content and making all these connections. And, I never heard until your bio the term polymath. I said, all right. What is that?
I'm glad you brought that up. So I was giving a talk, and the guy that introduced me said, I'm going to introduce Len May. He's an autodidactic polymath. And I was like, I'm from Philly. What'd you call me? I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant. So I'm like, I have to research what that is. So autodidactic, I can have a singularly focused interest. And then polymath is a person who is able to be an expert in multiple fields that they're interested in without having to go to school for that field. So an example would be a Leonardo da Vinci. So I started doing research and I bought a book on polymaths. And I'm like, Leonardo da Vinci, we already know, he's an artist, a painter, he's an inventor, all these different things he did. And so him, Richard Branson, you're looking at, Benjamin Franklin, all these different people. So I started reading. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Definitely a polymath. But then I started reading about, all right, Leonardo da Vinci. So it took him 10 years to complete the Mona Lisa. And I started reading more about him. I was like, out of the hundreds of projects he completed, he left thousands incomplete. And I was like, I wonder if he may have had ADD or ADHD. And then I went down a rabbit hole, like you were just describing, as people that are neurodivergent tend to do. And I am hyper focused and I'm studying it. And I'm like, well, there's a pattern. 80% of billionaires also have some neurodivergence, and they're also polymaths, and they have some sort of ADHD plus other things. So I'm like, I wonder if there's a connection between ADHD and polymaths. And I started looking for books and I couldn't find one. So I ended up writing one. So I wrote a book on, it's called Jack of All Trades, Master of Some. ADHD, polymath. So it's rewiring the modern genius. And I wrote it. I was writing and writing. There's so much more. I ended up with 409 pages. And I was like, holy shit. A person that's a ADHD person, when they pick up a book, I have it here. When they pick up a book that's 400 some pages, like there is no way I'm going to read that. Like I know for myself, I picked up this book. I'm like, no, it's overwhelming. So what I purposely did, I didn't put page numbers in there. There's no page numbers in this book. You actually you can go to a section, pull up any section, read a chapter without a page number, say, I'm going to read it out of order, whatever I want. So that way it's a less daunting task for somebody with ADHD that has to say, all right, I'm going to start with page 1 of preface all the way to page 400. You don't have to do that.
ADDers need dopamine hits to incent us and or, deadlines or novelty. So that's why the majority of alcoholics, any alcoholic you say I have ADD, they say, so do I. There are massive connections between the two.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with this whole thing of we do much better when our back's up against the wall. That's why we procrastinate up until last second. Then we have this dopamine rush, then we have to do it. So I like to create systems. And my ex-wife was like, why do you eat the same thing for lunch every day? I'm like, because I don't have to think about it. I just go and I do it. But I'll give people an example, one more. So I have a pretty extensive record collection, vinyl. I collect vinyl among other things, but music is a big part of my life. And I realized, I'm like, I have stacks of vinyl. I have to put them away like I have a big shelf and thousands of vinyl, but I haven't put these away yet. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to put them all away. I'm going to organize my vinyl. So the first thing was like, how am I going to organize my vinyl? So I used to work at Tower Records years ago, and we had genres. So you can organize it by, jazz is one, hip hop is another, rock is another. And I said, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to alphabetize everything from A to Z. So that was one. So I created a system. The second thing is, well, what do I do with dopamine? Well, the thing that I decided to do was I'm going to grab records I haven't listened to in a long time. I'm going to put on my turntable. I'm going to listen to them as I'm doing it. So now I'm getting some dopamine. Oh, this is cool. I haven't listened to this in a while. And number three, it was daunting. It was so much like you get ready because it's too much. So I said, I'm going to chunk it. So I'm going to grab a stack that I can hold in my hand. I'm going to do one little stack at a time. And as I'm doing it, I grabbed another stack. A few days. And, I was able to succeed with that. So creating a system that anchors you that you're going to get your dopamine and maybe delaying gratification. Like you were mentioning the gym. I don't particularly love to go to the gym to work out, even though I do like 4 or 5 days a week. But I love the sauna afterwards. So for me, dangling a carrot of a sauna anchors me into the dopamine hit that I know I'm going to receive, even though I may have to do something that I don't love to do in the meantime so I can get that reward. You have to create a reward system for you that that you can see that there is something at the end of this task. So I know I don't like to do this, but I'm going to do this because at the end I get a prize, whatever that is and whatever connects with you. And also you have to figure out what your flow state is. So during COVID, I took a class by Stephen Kotler on flow state. Flow state, for those of you that don't know, it's sort of when your neurochemicals are firing at the exact amount that they should be. It's like basketball players when they are say they can't miss. It's like a basket, like a swimming pool. It's your flow state. And by learning this, you can prime yourself for flow state. So one of the things that I learned is that when I go hiking, and I know I live in LA, so I pay the sunshine tax and I can do it all year round, not like, Boston and Philly, but now I can do this, and this is my flow state. So when I know I have a challenge of some sorts or a question, I go out on a hike and I don't think about it. But what happens is, I know it probably sounds hokey, but there's a tuning in to an answer. A lot of times I get that tune back into me based on me not trying to ask what the question is. And understanding you priming yourself for flow state, you can actually get all your neurochemicals firing at the right amounts that are needed for you. So when you find out what your flow state is, that helps a lot. But you have to find the system works for you. Having a thing that you can visualize, that you wrote this down. I'm going to do these 4 things today. I'm going to start with this one. And then when I'm done this one, I'm going to give myself something that I like and then move on to the second one. That helps a lot. But maybe it doesn't for you.
No, that's a good one. I tried for a while to do food incentives and say, I can't eat till I get this done. I need to go back to that. I don't stick with anything. Part of the problem, which is part of our nature.
It's about routines, man. It's all about creating routines. And when you create routines, they start becoming habits after a while. It's not the same as everybody else. Tony Robbins, been to so many events. He's like, you do this for 28 days, it sticks with you for life. No, it doesn't if you're an ADHD brain. It doesn't. But you have to create anchors that do anchor you into doing this over and over. So that's a struggle.
Yeah, it is. It is. I know. I was just talking to my therapist about this. She said, you've got to get an exact morning routine every day. I start out the same every day, every morning. But then I mix it from there. It's wild card. And yeah, I need to, and then I have good days. And then it's a lot like trying to get sober. You think you can do it on your own. And I have good days and I think, oh, I can do this. I didn't have a routine today and I got into a flow state and I can do it again tomorrow. But then I wake up and start from scratch all over again. And
there's no other shortcut that I've talked to hundreds of people with this. There is no shortcut. You have to create a routine. Routines that is the way that we are able to focus our superpower. If we don't have a routine, and we get out of whack when I go on vacation or something like that, and I'm not in routine. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, it's very frustrating. But during the day, I'm very good at doing my routines.
Yeah. Yeah. I finally figured out when I only realized I had this in the last year or a year and a half. It's like, oh my God, this explains why my parents have treated me like a child my whole life, especially on vacations. Kind of like because I deserve to be. I mean, I am like a big child. I get so thrown off and having to be on time at various events, because time blindness we haven't even talked about, but whole nother thing. It's crazy. But flow states. I know they say you can use music as a cue to get into a flow state. Routines help you do that. Is there anything else? You said you have to find your flow state. What did you mean?
Find your flow state. You find what works for you. Some people prep their flow state by doing exercises. And, you can do push-ups. You can go out in nature. You can ground yourself. It depends. Different people have different things that they connect with. For me, it's being, we have to push ourselves a little bit beyond our comfort level, but not so beyond our comfort level that it seems unattainable. So having a little bit of a push out to the sides where we get out of our comfort, that seems to trigger flow state as well.
Say that one again. Push. I know all about getting out of our comfort zone, but how does that?
Outside of your comfort level, but not too much out of your comfort level where it becomes unattainable. So I'll give you an example. I used hiking as an example. I went on some really intense hikes to this place called Skull Rock. I mean, to the point where we were doing it. I was belonging to a men's group. We were doing it in the middle of the night. No talking. And the guy in back of me, it was so steep. He was kind of pushing me up the hill. It was a struggle. It was a lot. Did it give me a dopamine hit? I'm not sure. I like that I finished it, but going to a hike it's uncomfortable a little bit, but it's not that challenging. That allows me to say, oh, this is fun. Now I'm enjoying the experience. And then maybe I'll push myself a little bit further. I'll go further uphill because now it's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's also challenging enough where I know it's attainable. And at the end, there's a dopamine hit. You feel good. Your body feels good. Your mind feels good. You're doing something you like. So when I'm on a hike, what am I going to do? Well, I may listen to music. I may listen to a podcast. I may listen to something. So this is my personal development time. People complain all the time about driving in traffic in LA. I'm like, I'm listening to a book. I'm listening to a podcast. This is my personal development time. I'm not complaining about that. So these are the things that you can do to kind of get yourself primed for flow state, but it works for different people. Different things work for different people.
Blue collar work, I don't know if that's still PC to say, works much better for ADDers, right? When I owned a pizza shop and I had to show up every day and just meet demand, I could do that no problem. It's white collar work. It's working with your mind where things are different every day and you have to be self-motivated. That is the excruciating battle I've been facing. And I do think as a work from home entrepreneur doing a white collar, essentially working with my mind, I'm trying to do community coaching, things like that. It's brutal because there's so much plumbing I'm trying to build underneath. And that's where we go to die, right? Work, administrative stuff that just bores me.
So here's my one lesson that I learned as an ADHD person through that process. Lean into the things that you're great at and hire and subsidize the things that you're not. I know we're talking sobriety and I'm not promoting any drugs for anyone. I'm just saying the research shows that, I have a friend of mine, a really good friend, was a partner investor in my company too. He was a medic for SEAL Team 6. And one of the things he talked about was during the time that the soldiers were left behind, they went in operations and got them out of Afghanistan. And he was calling me up and they lost 13 of them to suicide. And it's this revolving thing that you talked about. It's like, I have a habit. I'm doing this. So what they did was they sent him to Mexico for ibogaine treatment.
Oh yeah, I saw that in 60 Minutes, I think.
And it started
Yeah.
these. I'm not saying it's for everyone, and nothing is for everyone, but I'm saying that if you can start building new neural pathways, new connections, new synaptic connections as well, this is a way to be able to reintegrate and change your neurochemistry because you're able to stimulate new connections. So, yeah, there are ways to do that. There's ways to do that without substances as well. Deep meditation, etc. But if you can use, psychotropic substances of some sort, psychedelics of some sorts, natural medicines, like I said, trying to find a meditative technique. I did this Joe Dispenza retreat. I mean, for me, for an ADD brain to sit there for an hour to meditate and do it several times, I mean, that's one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. I don't love it, but I fought my way through it. And these are different ways to be able to, as I'm doing it, I'm creating new neural networks. And these are the things about personal development that everything has to, you constantly have to start creating new neural pathways in order for you to be able to feel like you're getting stimulated. And routine, as you said, is a killer for us. But being able to get out of that cycle, it takes two things. It takes the physical work that you're already doing, and then it takes the mental work on a daily basis to try to get out of these habits. Change them. You take one and you replace it with the other. And that feeling of dopamine anchors you. So if you know that you're getting a reward, there's an anchor, and your brain can think about, I did this. The process was unpleasant, which you kind of forget about. But the end result, I remember. It's the same thing as getting a tattoo. Man, I'm all tattooed. So it's very, very unpleasant. I kind of like the feeling in some parts, but it's very unpleasant. And you forget. I'm like, after I get a tattoo, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And you're like, you forget. You're like, that's so cool. I love it, man. I'm going to go for another one. Like women have kids, like after childbirth. Oh, no, I'm not doing that again. They're like, you know what? Let's have another kind of thing. So this is the anchoring in the results, because you're going to forget the process, is what you need to, that's your dopamine anchoring. The ADD allows me to actually lean in and do lots of different things. And the thing with people with ADD, we have a lot of ideas, but we don't follow through and take full action to complete. This is something that I am trying to express to my community of like-minded ADHDers. Complete, finish something, be proud of it, write a 400-page book, do a podcast, do a blog, do it. Get off the couch and actually do it. Don't start writing out, notebooks full of what I'm going to do. Do one of those and then celebrate your win on that and do the next one. So the way to find me is my company's EndoDNA. So it's endodna.com. I'm also on social, Len May. I think on Instagram, I'm Len May DNA. You can find me there. I'm very responsive, LinkedIn, etc. If you're interested, my book is called Jack of All Trades, Master of Some. You can get it on Amazon or wherever you get books. And if you're interested in music and you just want to kind of geek out with me on music, I do something called Record of the Day. Every single day, I post it on my social. I just grab a vinyl and talk about that. And then if you're interested in coaching, connect with me on Len May Coaching. And this is the work that I do with mostly high-level executives, C-suite, but could be anybody. And it's just kind of that channeling their superpower into actually being a superpower and not being something that's detrimental to their success.
Great stuff. All right. Thank you so much, Len. And thanks, y'all, for listening and or watching. And as always, please like, share, subscribe, review, etc.